Hello, this is Glenn Sizemore from the Hope First Church of God at P.O. Box 404, Mount Sterling, Kentucky, 40353. And our hope is to bring Jesus Christ into your life. We hope you enjoy our programs, and we hope you enjoy our services, and I trust that God will do something in your life. I pledge allegiance to the Bible, God's holy word. I will make it a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, and I will hide its words in my heart that I might not sin against God. And if you will remain standing, I want to read one verse that is found in the story of the prodigal son. I'm not going to try to cover the whole thing tonight, but there's so much in there. But in verse 17, the Bible has a verse in there that I call it I guess you could say the verse that revolved or just changed his life, a life-changing verse in here. And it says this in St. Luke chapter 15. And when he came to himself, he said, "How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger." You may be seated. I think this verse of Scripture tells us when the prodigal son came to his senses, or this was his moment of truth. I think every one of us in our lives at times, we come to a place that we reach what I call the moment of truth. You can't make excuses. You have to accept the situation that you're in. And when we come to this, what I call the moment of truth, we see things in the real perspective. We see things what they really are, the way they really are. And this had to be a sobering moment for this young man, is when he realized the failure and the mistake that he had made in life. That he had given all that he had up, wasted his living and his substance in righteous living. And folks, every one of us in here, especially if we're saved tonight, someplace, we came to the moment of truth. When we realized that we were going nowhere in life, that our life was not benefiting us or our loved ones, and we had to accept the fact that we had become failures in life. And our only hope and our only help was to come back to Jesus Christ and let Him reevaluate our lives, or let us reevaluate our lives through Him. Now, this may be the hardest moment you ever faced in life, is when you come to the moment that you wasted life. You were wrong. You did what you shouldn't have done. You made the mistakes. You tried to do it on your own, and you couldn't do it. And there comes a time in our life, folks, that we don't need a support group to tell us what's right. There comes a time in our lives that we don't have to have mom and dad to tell us that we done wrong. There comes a time in our lives, folks, when we see ourselves for what we really are. And we realize that I made a mistake. Past teachings, past philosophies, and our ideas of what we thought life was like, they don't mean anything now. Because all of a sudden this prodigal thought that he knew how to manage his life better than anybody, and now he comes to the grim reality that he didn't know anything, and he had messed up and lost his life. He had lost his inheritance. And here's the thing. Even though he got to the bottom, he did know that there was help if he would come to Jesus Christ. You see, when you reach the moment of truth in your life, folks, your past bearings or your past teachings, they don't mean anything anymore. When I was under conviction And I realized I needed to be saved. All those times that I said I don't need Christ. All of those times that I said I'm doing good just the way I am. All of a sudden I came to that moment of truth that I realized I was wrong. And I had to accept that fact. You see, this is a moment a lot of people get when they, maybe as they walk into an electric chair. Maybe they're going to the scaffolds. Maybe they hear that prison door click behind them. And they realize, I'm here for the rest of my life. Moment of truth. Moment of truth realizes when we made bad decisions. And we lost our families. We lost our possessions. We were facing maybe major surgery. And the doctor says there's 10% chance that you're going to make it. Brings us to a moment of truth in our lives. Brings us to a time that we're going to sit down and we're going to reevaluate our lives. We can't help that. And when it comes to our moment of truth sometimes, folks, there's no tomorrows for us. There may be a time when your tomorrows have run out. Your string or your rope has run out. And now it's judgment. And this young man comes to himself and he says, I perish with hunger. What a sad plot in life is when we have lived most of our lives in hunger and in thirst. And then, you see, this is a time that we focus on what sin has done. We see the ugliest part of our life. When I was sitting in that little old church that night, and conviction was all over me, I saw the ugliest part of my life. I saw my failures. I saw where I went wrong. I saw where I took the wrong road. And all of a sudden, I didn't need somebody to blame for where I was at. I didn't need somebody to tell me that I had taken the wrong road. I knew that. I knew by what I had done, not what other people had done to me, but I had seen this, and I saw the fool that life had made of me. And I ask you tonight, I ask you to think about, when did you come to that moment of truth in your life? You see, sin made me promises that it could in no way fulfill. Sin made me promises in my life, folks, that there was no way that it could fulfill them for me. And then it comes to that moment in life that I realize that I've been taken. I hate that when somebody takes me, deceives me. And now you know how Saul felt back in the Old Testament when Saul was there and he admitted that he had played the fool and had erred exceedingly. He said, I played the fool. And you see, the truth is, we never realized how good we had it at home until we left. Folks, when I left home, had my little, everything I ever owned, everything I had to my life was in a suitcase. It was a small suitcase. That's all I had. 2 or 3 pair of pants, 2 or 3 shirts. Had about $40-some in my pocket. But I thought, man, I'm free. I'm going to make it big. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any prospects for a job. I just had to go and try to find one. But you see, after I got there, and I was working at a minimum wage job in a dingy little 2-room apartment, after I had been there for a while, I realized that My refrigerator was pretty bare. Mom and Dad's was always full. And I was laying there one night remembering how good I had it at home. But now I had to make it on my own. And you see, I don't get things sometimes, how that we leave the church. You know, if, I don't know, if coming to church gave you a hangover headache, you would never come back. You wouldn't come back. But we'll go back to the bars or to the alcohol. And coming and realizing the toll that sin has extracted out of our lives. It amazes me that we can't wait to get back and do it again. Some will come to that moment of truth when they are lonely. Some will come to the moment of truth in times of sickness. Some will come to that moment of truth in times of emptiness in their life. But after sin has taken from you about everything you'll ever have in life, you don't blame it for the misery that you're in. You blame somebody else. And you see, you can't blame it on the poor example of maybe some Christian that led you to a distorted vision of Christ. You can't blame it on your neighbor or the folks you run with. There comes a time in your life that you blame yourself, folks. And I think in church, a lot of times we blame things on other people. Why we don't do this or why we don't do that. But after, and I've watched people, after they have spent their check, all that they have, and I've seen the bartenders throw them out. Next week, they come crawling right back. And you see, if we got you and throwed you out of this church and told you, don't come back, get out of here. Every time you passed this place, you'd probably spit on this church. And you would never set foot back in here again. So you see how sin has a pull in our lives. And we need to come to a moment of decision. People act like that the people in bars love them more than people in church. People think that the devil is going to give them more than Jesus Christ. I don't see how anyone could believe that. The deception is that we're going to get a whole lot on down the road. But I think everybody knows that it's better to be at home than to be in the nightclubs. I had rather, folks, listen, some of the greatest times in my life was when I was home playing with my children. Not when I was looking over a bottle of beer or something like that. The greatest moments in our lives is when we're with our family, with our children. And our children, knowing that we are there. Households often take the trip into the far country. Mom and dad separates. But it's amazing how they often collide along the way. Read a story one time about a fellow that grew apples. And a neighbor was wanting to make some apples, and the fellow told him, he said, man, go get you a bushel out of my field. And the old neighbor said, no. He said, I'll tell you what, I've tried your apples. And he said, they are far too sour. And the old apple raiser said, no. He said, I planted that road next to the road there to be sour so people would leave them alone. He said, you go over in the middle and there are some good apples in there. And you know, I've noticed the sour people stay at the edge of the church. The sour people are those that are in and out, up and down, hot and cold. here and there now and then. And you see, those people that are on the edge of the church leave a sour taste in our mouth. But if we get out in the middle where the saints are, oh my goodness, folks, what a good taste a good old saint will leave in your mouth. It's a sad sight when you see a person stripped of everything they've ever had, and sin has done it, and they realize it, and they know that sin has stripped them. Come to a moment of truth in their life, but they have enough courage to admit they were wrong. The thing that helped me in life, I didn't sit back there and blame people for what I was in my life and how it was messed up and was messing up. I just blamed me. And then I realized that Jesus Christ could help me. I've talked to a lot of people that are drunkards or drug addicts. They lost everything in life except the courage to admit that they were the ones that was wrong. They come to a moment of truth. And I look at their faces, and I see the faces of people. And you know what they're saying? You know what their faces are saying to me? Their faces are saying, I perish with hunger. We have a lot of people in Montgomery County, folks, that are perishing with hunger. And it's a hard lesson, but it's a needful lesson to learn that you're not going to get something for nothing in this world. Satan is not going to give you something for nothing. And when a person comes to desire to put their home back together, the best thing he can say is, I need the help of the Lord Jesus Christ. I can't do this without his help. Every drunkard, every drug addict, every adulterer can honestly say, what I had before was better than what I have now. Folks, let me share with you tonight, what we have in Jesus Christ is better than anything we'll ever have anywhere. We'll never come, and if we've come to that moment of truth, we need to live that. I've had people that try to blame the church. It's too restrictive. Oh, you all are sad and joyless and handcuffed and, I guess you could say, straitjacket. But I want to tell you, folks, Father's house is the place of plenty, not the far country. Church is where we're going to get the best in life. You ain't going to get it out there in the world. And we need to let our families know and our friends know that we don't have a desire to go back to eating the husk that the hogs have left. The disciples of Jesus Christ, they never lacked company. And I'll tell you something else, my friend. They never lacked excitement, if you want to look at it like that. Brother, they was always into something. And people think the rules of the church is too tight. But, brother, it don't take long for you to figure out that the loose ends is worse than the tightrope. It doesn't take long. I'd rather grab onto a tightrope than a loose one, hadn't you? Any time in my life. And when I have a need to be rescued, I want to reach for something higher. Have you ever seen somebody that was drowning reach for something lower? Have you ever seen anybody that's trying to be rescued reach a hand lower than what they already were? There comes a time in our lives, folks, that we need to realize that we need something higher. Everybody seems to be looking for a better deal in life. But folks, you ain't going to get no better deal than what came off of that cross. You'll never get a better deal in life. And when we stop trusting Jesus Christ, progress stops in our life. Growth stops in your life, and disaster begins. When you quit trusting Jesus Christ, you're going to see danger and you're going to see heartache. Every person here in this building, we've had a chance to prove for ourselves which is better. Every one of us has. We've had a chance. Which is better, the world or the church? The far country or the Father's house? Brother, I've had both of them. And I choose the Father's house still yet. When I was 21 years old, I realized that. I had enough sense to realize that. And I came to know Jesus Christ. And I have chosen God's way of living is better than anything else. Old man down in New Bethel, Tennessee, used to sing, I just love God's way of living best of all. It will save the soul from hell and keep the body out of jail. I just love God's way of living best of all. I love God's way of living tonight. And folks, I'm glad when I came to the moment of truth that I realized what truth was. We need to realize that today, and we need to wake up. As Christian people, we need to wake up and realize that mediocre Christian living will not be a light to our families and to our friends. No one denied me of the right to make blunders. God allowed me to make those. But I did have enough sense to know they were blunders and know that I was the one that made them. Now it's up to us tonight. It's up to me and you. What risk are you taking? What risk for God are you taking tonight? Are you risking anything? Is there any kind of a risk? What's going on in life? We're taking a risk. We're gambling. And folks, most of the time, it does not pay off. When we choose the far country, brother, let me tell you something. You are risking everything. And chances are the odds are big time against you. You're going to lose. I've listened to the testimonies of those who've lived in the far country and lived for a long time. Some of them still tried to make out like they were doing well, but when I listened to their testimonies, it was always one destructive thing after the other. They destroyed this life, or they destroyed that life, or they hurt this one, or they hurt that one. After years of living in sin, no productivity for good out of their lives. We don't want to stand before God with that on our lives. I have seen those that have testified about Jesus Christ and what He has done in their lives. I have heard those testimonies of people that have told how good God has been to them and what they have achieved by being a Christian and what God has added to their life. You see, it's not what you can just get for yourself with the help of the Holy Spirit, but God will add things to our lives if we will witness, if we will pray, if we will tell others of the good old story of Jesus Christ. The prodigal son. I can see him there as he's feeding these hogs, and they are getting the corn, and he's gnawing on the husk. But they didn't even offer him that. Folks, it ain't fun eating what the hogs are eating. I want to tell you this, it ain't fun living like the world. The fun is on the narrow road on your way to heaven. The excitement is on the narrow road on your way to heaven. Somehow, church, we have got to reinvent a way of making people realize that this world is going to take its toll on them sooner or later, and we need to lay a foundation that they need Jesus Christ more than anything in this world. I look out and I say, you will meet people tomorrow, and you can look on their face. You can hear their attitude. I can hear their voices. I can hear their foul language and their lying and their and it tells me they are perishing with hunger for Jesus Christ. Stand with me tonight, if you will. I'm going to ask you about your life tonight. Do you feel like that you're slowly perishing? That you're doing no good work for the Lord? If you want to pray tonight, these altars are open for you to come and pray. But if you want to just commit your life and say, Lord, I'm going to do better, I trust that you'll do that. But while we sing tonight, we thank you for listening to our program today, and I hope and trust that you learned something and that God has spoke to your heart. And I trust that you will become a better person by just listening.